She wakes up with silent tears, while her millionaire husband sleeps peacefully beside her. In her hand, a positive pregnancy test that will change everything, and a secret diary where she documents 300 microaggressions suffered during 3 years of marriage. What nobody knows is that her powerful father, CEO of a billion-dollar empire, is watching everything from afar, and he is determined to protect his daughter-in-law, whom he considers a daughter, even if it means confronting his own son. Stay until the end to discover how a seemingly fragile woman manages to transform 300 wounds into her greatest strength. And tell me, have you ever felt that words can hurt more than blows? The luxurious triplex apartment gleams in the morning sun. Crystal, Italian marble, panoramic city views, a perfect environment that hides invisible wounds, where each room silently witnessed a small humiliation. Aisha, a brilliant economic researcher with deep roots in African traditions, hides her extraordinary intelligence beneath polite smiles. Her hand trembles slightly as she puts away the pregnancy test, while whispering an ancient prayer for the protection of the child she has just discovered. Tiago Mendes, heir to the Mendes Corp telecommunications empire, navigates life with the arrogance of someone who has never been contradicted. Impeccably dressed in his Italian suit, he consults his platinum watch. Another day of business achievements awaits him, unaware of the hurricane that is approaching. "I'm pregnant," she says softly as he adjusts his tie in the mirror. Without turning around, he replies, "Great. An heir is exactly what the family needs right now." She opens her diary and calmly writes, "Microaggression number 301. In the impressive meeting room at Mendes Corp, Eduardo watches his son lead the presentation with a mixture of pride and concern. In his personal drawer, a meticulously organized dossier documents each of the 300 invisible wounds that Tiago inflicted on Aisha. What he plans to do with this information will change the fate of the entire family forever. The Mendes Corp board meeting was unfolding with the precision of a Swiss watch. Tiago Mendes, impeccable in his bespoke Italian suit, led the presentation on the net fiber acquisition with the unwavering confidence of someone born to lead. The graphs projected on the giant screen showed ambitious projections, while the board members nodded in silent approval. At the head of the table, Eduardo Mendes, 68, patriarch of the family and CEO of the empire, watched his son with an analytical gaze that belied his true concerns. Decades of building an empire had taught Eduardo to keep his emotions under strict control, especially in corporate environments. As you can see, gentlemen, the acquisition will represent a 22% increase in our penetration of the residential broadband market, Tiago explained with natural authority. And most importantly, we eliminated our main regional competitor. A murmur of approval swept through the room. Eduardo, however, remained impassive, his mind divided between pride in his son's competence and growing concern about a completely different matter. When the meeting ended and the executives left, Eduardo discreetly gestured for Tiago to stay. He waited for the door to close before speaking. "Impressive presentation," he commented, maintaining the professional tone he always used at the company, even with his son. "Thank you, Dad," Tiago replied, beginning to gather his materials. "The analysis team did an exceptional job collecting the data. Aisha called my secretary this morning." Eduardo abruptly changed the subject. "She canceled lunch with her mother. She said she wasn't feeling well." Tiago's slight furrowing of the brow was the only indication that the information had surprised him. "Probably nothing serious. I'll talk to her later." Eduardo carefully observed his son's reaction. "Did she mention anything about being pregnant?" Tiago paused momentarily, his expression softening almost imperceptibly. "Yes, we found out recently. We were going to officially inform the family next weekend." "Congratulations," said Eduardo without excessive enthusiasm. "A grandchild is a blessing. I imagine you've already arranged for the best medical care available." "Of course," Tiago replied with slight irritation. "I've already hired Dr. Carmen Santos. She's the most sought-after obstetrician in the city." Eduardo nodded slowly. "And how is Aisha coping with the news? Pregnancy is a delicate time, especially for a woman far from her family." "Aisha is fine." Tiago dismissed the concern with a gesture. "She's strong and adaptable. She always has been." Checking his platinum watch, he added, "If you'll excuse me, I have a video conference with Japanese investors in 5 minutes." When the door closed after his son left, Eduardo remained motionless for a few moments. Finally, he took a small key from his pocket and opened the bottom drawer of his desk. From inside, he extracted a brown leather folder, worn from frequent handling. Upon opening it, it revealed a meticulously organized collection of notes, photographs, and transcripts, all dated and categorized. On the last page, a recent note: Interaction 300, charity dinner. Tiago publicly interrupts Aisha during a conversation about the African economy, redirecting the subject to himself. Third occurrence that night. Eduardo added a new entry: Mir 301, pregnancy announced. Reaction focused exclusively on the heir aspect. No demonstration of concern for the wife's emotional well-being. Closing the folder with a heavy sigh, Eduardo muttered to himself, 301 small wounds, and he doesn't even realize what he's doing. The traditional market of Igbale teemed with colors and aromas. Vendors hawked their wares while buyers enthusiastically haggled over prices. Aisha walked through the narrow aisles with the familiarity of someone who grew up in that environment, greeting the vendors by name, despite the simple dress that contrasted with the expensive wedding ring that gleamed on her hand. 3 years had passed since she left that world to enter high society by marrying Tiago Mendes, but she had never abandoned her roots. Her steps naturally led her to the medicinal herb stall of Grandma Camaria, an elder respected for her wisdom and intuition. "Aisha, my daughter," called the old woman, her wrinkled face lighting up with a genuine smile. "Come, I have something for you." The young woman approached, returning the smile. Grandma Camaria studied her face for a few moments, her ancient eyes seeing far beyond the surface. "Her eyes carry news," the old woman said finally, "and her womb holds new life." Aisha nodded, surprised. "How do you know?" "The ancestors tell me things," the old woman replied with an enigmatic smile. She handed Aisha a small cloth bag. "Tea made from sacred leaves. It will strengthen you and the baby." "Thank you, Grandma Camaria," Aisha said, putting the gift in her bag. The old woman held her hands with surprising firmness. "Remember who you are, daughter. Your strength does not come from the name you carry now, but from the women who came before you." Those words haunted Aisha throughout her return to the luxurious apartment she shared with Tiago. Upon arriving, she found her mother-in-law, Regina Mendes, inspecting the living room decor with a critical eye. With her impeccably styled hair and discreet yet valuable jewelry, Regina personified the cold elegance of the elite. "Where have you been, Aisha?" she asked bluntly, barely concealing her displeasure at her daughter-in-law's simple dress. She canceled lunch with only an hour's notice. "I wasn't feeling well this morning," Aisha replied calmly. "Then I felt better and went to the traditional market to get some herbs." Regina frowned. "Herbs? Honey, we have private doctors available. Tiago told me about the pregnancy, and I've already scheduled appointments with the best specialists." "Thank you, Mrs. Regina, but I intend to reconcile modern medicine with the traditions of my people." "Traditions?" Regina murmured, as if the word had a bitter taste. "This baby will be a Mendes. We need to ensure he receives only the best, not folkloric treatments." Aisha smiled, maintaining the perfect composure she had learned to uphold during her 3 years living with her husband's family. "The traditions I maintain are not folklore, Mrs. Regina. They are ancient knowledge that has coexisted with modern medicine for generations in my family." "Well," sighed Regina, clearly uncomfortable with her daughter-in-law's gentle but firm resistance, "just make sure it doesn't interfere with proper medical care. Eduardo is organizing a reception to officially announce the pregnancy next weekend." "We weren't consulted about this," Aisha remarked, feeling the familiar sensation of being excluded from decisions about her own life. Regina dismissed the comment with a gesture. "It's a Mendes family tradition. All important announcements are made on formal occasions." When she was finally alone, Aisha took out of her bag the small, leather-bound diary she had carried with her for 3 years. Sitting on the wide balcony overlooking the city, she opened it to a new page and wrote carefully, "Microaggression, Juror 302. Family traditions disrespected, treated as folklore. Decisions about the baby made without my participation. Planned reception without our knowledge or consent." Closing her diary, Aisha prepared the tea she had received from Grandma Camaria. While the water boiled, she contemplated her reflection in the glass window. A woman divided between two worlds, now carrying not only her own hopes, but the future of a new life. The Hotel Imperial's event hall gleamed beneath crystal chandeliers. The city's business and social elite mingled among tables adorned with rare orchids, while waiters offered champagne in crystal glasses. The reception to announce Aisha's pregnancy had transformed, like all Mendez events, into a calculated display of power and influence. Aisha, stunning in an emerald green dress that concealed her 12-week pregnancy, smiled politely as she chatted with the wife of a prominent foreign investor. Her knowledge of international economics, the result of years of study and research, flowed naturally into the conversation. "Your analysis of the African market is fascinating," the investor commented, turning to Aisha. "Did you work in the field before you got married?" Before she could answer, Tiago moved closer, placing his arm possessively around her waist. "My wife had some academic interests, but now her focus is our family," he replied with a smile. "And soon, our firstborn." The investor smiled, congratulating the couple, without noticing how Aisha's body subtly stiffened under her husband's touch. "Actually," she began, keeping her voice calm, "my research on microeconomics in emerging markets was published in the Journal of International Economics last year." Tiago laughed, as if she had told a trivial joke. "Aisha likes to keep herself busy with her projects. It's lovely, isn't it?" "Adorable wouldn't be the word I'd use to describe an analysis that influenced the strategy of 3 multinational companies," replied the investor, visibly impressed. "Gentlemen, I think we underestimated the intelligence we have at our table." Tiago's smile faltered for a moment. "If you'll excuse me, I need to speak with the CEO of Asiatech." As Tiago walked away, Regina, who had been watching the scene from afar, approached Aisha. For the first time, there was something different in her gaze, a mixture of recognition and reluctant respect. "He never mentioned his publication," said Regina, holding a glass of champagne. "I was never asked," Aisha replied simply. On the other side of the room, Eduardo Mendez watched the interaction with interest. Nearby, an old friend commented, "Your daughter-in-law seems to have more to offer than she lets on." Eduardo nodded thoughtfully. "Much more. And my son is foolish not to see the treasure he has at home." As the night wore on, Tiago climbed onto the small stage for the official announcement. With Eduardo and Regina by his side, he raised a glass in a toast. "Ladies and gentlemen, it is with immense joy that I announce that the Mendez family will soon welcome a new member. My wife Aisha is pregnant with our first child." Applause filled the hall as Tiago continued. "As everyone knows, Mendez Corp is expanding its operations internationally, and nothing could better symbolize our prosperous future than the arrival of an heir." From her seat in the front row, Aisha maintained a polite smile as she felt a sharp pain in her abdomen. For a moment of panic, she feared she was losing the baby. She took a deep breath, applying the meditation techniques she had learned from her grandmother. The pain lessened, but left a warning. The stress and silent anguish were beginning to take their toll. Later that night, in the bathroom of her apartment's master suite, Aisha opened her diary, writing in trembling handwriting. "Microaggression, Ranger 303, publicly diminished my academic career. Referred to our son exclusively as heir, denying his humanity. Did not invite me to participate in the announcement of my own pregnancy. The baby felt my distress today." As she closed the diary and carefully hid it, she didn't notice Tiago standing at the bathroom door, watching her with an intrigued expression, as if he were seeing someone he didn't fully recognize for the first time. The ancestral home of the Mendez family, built over a century ago in the mountains, maintained the appearance of an imposing colonial fortress. Inside, however, time seemed suspended between the old and the modern. Tiago drove nervously along the winding road leading to the property, while Aisha silently observed the landscape, caressing her 4-month pregnant belly. "I don't understand why my father insisted on this traditional ceremony," grumbled Tiago. "We could simply have the baby shower at the hotel like all normal people. The ancestral blessing ceremony has been important in your family for generations," Aisha replied softly. "Your father said that every firstborn Mendez receives this blessing." Tiago rolled his eyes. "Superstitions. We're in the 21st century." At the ancestral home, Eduardo and Regina awaited them, along with Uncle Ambrosio, Eduardo's older brother, who rarely left the property. At 78 years old, Ambrosio was the guardian of family traditions, an austere man with eyes that seemed to see beyond the present. During the afternoon, while everyone was getting ready, Aisha explored the mansion, feeling strangely connected to the place. In the library, she found Eduardo examining old documents. "Are you feeling well, my daughter?" he asked with a kindness rarely shown. "Yes, just curious about the family history." Eduardo smiled, gesturing for her to sit down. "The Mendez family built their empire from maritime trade 6 generations ago. But few know that we owe our fortune to an African woman who saved my great-great-grandfather from a deadly fever. Aisha's eyes widened in surprise. I've never heard that story. Some stories are kept only within the closest family circle, Eduardo explained, watching her intently. Something tells me you understand the value of untold stories. At sunset, the family gathered in the inner courtyard where an altar had been prepared. Candles, incense, and traditional offerings were arranged in a circle. Uncle Ambrose, dressed in ceremonial robes, conducted the ritual in an ancient language that Aisha, surprisingly, recognized from her studies of African languages. When the time came for Aisha to enter the circle, she felt a powerful energy course through her body. The candle flames flickered violently, despite the absence of wind. Uncle Ambrose paled, taking a step back. "The ancestors are restless," he murmured. "They refuse to give their blessing." "What? That's ridiculous," Tiago protested. "Silence," ordered Eduardo. "Ambrosio, what does that mean?" The old man looked directly at Tiago, then at Aisha. "The ancestors say there are invisible wounds that need to be healed before the next generation can be blessed." They spoke of 300 tears shed in silence. A heavy silence fell over the group. Aisha felt her heart race while Regina brought her hand to her mouth in shock. Tiago seemed confused and irritated, but Eduardo simply nodded, as if confirming something he already knew. "The ceremony is over," declared Uncle Ambrose. "The circle will not be completed until the wounds are acknowledged and healed." That night, in her room, Aisha wept openly for the first time since discovering her pregnancy. These were not tears of sadness, but of validation. The ancestors knew. Somehow, they had seen her 300 silent tears. Outside the room, Eduardo remained motionless, clutching the leather briefcase he always kept locked in his office. The moment to reveal its contents was drawing near. Tension permeated every room of the ancestral home like a thick fog after the ceremony's failure. Tiago spent hours on the phone, managing business remotely and avoiding discussions about what had happened. Regina oscillated between discomfort and curiosity, casting inquisitive glances at Aisha during meals. Only Eduardo maintained an enigmatic calm, like someone patiently awaiting the right moment to act. The following morning, Aisha walked to the back garden, where an old pergola covered in vines offered shade and privacy. There, she sat on a stone bench and opened her diary, rereading the hundreds of meticulously documented entries from their 3 years of marriage. 300 tears, she whispered to herself. 300 little wounds. "I imagine this is your record," said a deep voice, making her jump. Eduardo Mendez stood at the entrance to the arbor, clutching his aged leather briefcase. His eyes, normally calculating, conveyed a rarely seen emotion. Compassion. "Can I join you?" he asked. Aisha nodded, quickly closing the diary. Eduardo sat down beside her, placing the folder between them. "You know, when Tiago was 6 years old, he broke his arm falling from a tree in this garden," Eduardo began, looking at the trees in the distance. "He didn't shed a single tear. Even with the bone exposed, he held back his sobs. 'Mendez, don't cry,' he said, repeating what he had heard from me so many times." He paused, his fingers drumming on the folder. "That day, I realized my mistake. I was creating a man who would repress his own pain and, consequently, be unable to recognize the pain of others." Eduardo turned to Aisha. "I tried to correct it, but the damage was already done. The pattern was set." Aisha remained silent, absorbing her father-in-law's words. Eduardo opened the folder, revealing documents, photographs, and notes organized chronologically. "This is my record," he explained. "I started documenting the microaggressions, as you call them, from his engagement. I observed how my son unconsciously replicated toxic behaviors he learned from me and from generations of Mendez men before him." Stunned, Aisha flipped through the pages. It was all there. Derogatory comments disguised as jokes, disproportionate expectations, moments when Tiago had silenced or belittled her publicly. Each incident was meticulously recorded, accompanied by insightful observations about its emotional impact on Aisha. "Why?" her voice faltered. "Why document this?" Eduardo took a deep breath. "Because I promised myself that the cycle would end with my son. To break a pattern, you first have to recognize it. And for Tiago to recognize it, we need irrefutable evidence." He turned a few pages, showing her a detailed family tree. "This is Amara." He pointed to a strong-looking woman, photographed in the early 20th century. "The African woman who saved my great-great-grandfather." After curing his fever with traditional knowledge, he brought her to Brazil, not as a slave, but as his advisor and eventually his unofficial wife. Aisha felt a shiver run down her spine. Is she part of the Mendes lineage? Yes, although official history has erased her existence. Her blood runs in the veins of all the Mendes, including Tiago and the baby you're carrying. Eduardo gently held Aisha's hand. And there's more. I researched your family, Aisha. He showed another document, connecting points on Aisha's family tree to a distant branch of the Mendes family. Your great-grandmother and my grandmother were distant cousins. Our meeting was not a coincidence, but destiny fulfilling an ancestral promise. Silent tears streamed down Aisha's face, but this time they were tears of understanding, not of pain. The ancestors refused the blessing not out of rejection, Edward continued, but because they demand reconciliation and truth before blessing the next generation. They want the cycle of unseen wounds to end. How can we do this? Aisha asked, her voice a whisper laden with hope. Eduardo closed the folder, his face taking on the determined expression of a CEO about to close the most important deal of his life. First, we confront the truth. Then, we offer a chance at redemption. The library in the ancestral home, with its dark wood bookshelves reaching the ceiling, and the gently crackling stone fireplace, created the perfect setting for the crucial moment that was approaching. Eduardo had called a family meeting, announcing that important matters needed to be discussed before they returned to the city. Tiago was the last to arrive, visibly annoyed by the interruption of his video conference. Regina was already seated in a leather armchair, her restless hands constantly adjusting her pearl necklace. Aisha occupied a spot near the window where the late afternoon light bathed her delicate features in a golden glow. Can we be brief? Tiago asked, checking his watch. I have a meeting with Japanese investors in 2 hours. Eduardo, standing by the fireplace, indicated a chair. Sit down, son. What we will discuss today is more important than any negotiation. Something in his father's voice made Tiago obey without question. Eduardo then placed 2 identical folders on the central table, his and Aisha's now matching. 3 years ago, I started documenting a pattern of behavior that I observed in you, Tiago. Eduardo began in a calm but firm voice. A pattern that I recognized because I myself practiced it for decades. What are you talking about, Dad? The irritation in Tiago's voice barely disguised his confusion. Eduardo opened the folder, carefully selecting a page. Aisha's birthday dinner, September 15th of last year. You interrupted your wife 17 times during the meal, disregarded her opinion on the new African subsidiary, despite her expertise in the subject, and made 3 comments about how she should dress more appropriately for a Mendes wife. A heavy silence filled the room. Tiago blinked several times, as if processing the information. You spied on me? She finally asked, her voice wavering between disbelief and indignation. I observed, Eduardo corrected, as a father and as CEO of this family. Regina straightened up in her chair, realization beginning to form in her eyes. Eduardo, you're not suggesting that our son... I'm stating, Eduardo interrupted, that our son learned from us to devalue his partner through small daily aggressions that seem insignificant in isolation, but which, added together, 300 times. Aisha finished softly, speaking for the first time. 300 small wounds that I documented here. She indicated her diary on the table. Tiago stood up abruptly, his face red. This is absurd. I have never, ever assaulted my wife. Not with fists, Eduardo replied gravely, but with words, gestures, and omissions. Invisible violence that is just as harmful as physical violence. With relentless methodicalness, Eduardo began to present evidence. Condescending emails, recordings of meetings where Tiago disregarded Aisha's contributions, photographs of occasions where he subtly humiliated her in public. With each new example, Tiago seemed to shrink in his chair, while Regina covered her mouth with her hands, unshed tears glistening in her eyes. That's why, Eduardo concluded, the ancestors refused the blessing. They saw what we all pretend not to see, that this marriage is built on invisible wounds. Tiago stood up again, this time staggering. He looked at Aisha, really looked, perhaps for the first time in years. Is this how you feel? Hurt by me? Aisha held my gaze, years of repressed emotions showing in her voice. Every time you disregard my opinion, minimize my achievements, or decide for me as if I were incapable, it's like a small wound. So small it's barely noticeable, but 300 small wounds form a deep scar. The revelation seemed to shatter something inside Tiago. He looked at his parents, at the meticulously compiled dossier, and finally at his wife, who carried their son and 3 years of silent sorrow. "I didn't know," he murmured, his arrogance crumbling like a sandcastle. "I really didn't realize what I was doing." "That's exactly the point," Eduardo replied. "We didn't realize it. I didn't realize it with your mother for decades. It's an invisible pattern for those who perpetuate it, but painfully clear to those who suffer it." Regina, who had remained silent, finally spoke, her voice trembling. "I should have said something. I should have taught you differently, son." She looked at Aisha with newfound understanding. "I should have protected you, as I didn't protect myself." Tiago seemed lost, like a child who suddenly discovers that the rules of the game were always different from what he imagined. "What happens now?" he asked, his voice devoid of its usual confidence. Eduardo slowly closed the folder. "Now, my son, the real work begins. Recognizing the pattern is only the first step. Breaking it will require much more." Outside the library, night had completely fallen, enveloping the ancestral home in shadows. Inside, however, a small flame of hope began to shine. Faint, uncertain, but real. 3 weeks after the confrontation at the library, Aisha walked calmly through the bustling Igbali market, her 5-month pregnant belly now clearly visible beneath her colorful traditional dress. Since the dossier was revealed, Tiago had temporarily distanced himself, asking for space to process everything he had discovered about himself. Aisha, for her part, had decided to return to the community where she grew up, seeking strength in her roots while her marriage hung in uncertain limbo. "Aisha, my little girl," called Grandma Camaria, waving from her herb stall. "Come, come, the baby has grown." With a genuine smile, Aisha approached the old woman, allowing her to place her wrinkled hands on her belly. "He is strong," Grandma Camaria stated confidently, "but he carries his mother's anxieties." "I'm trying to find peace, Grandma," Aisha admitted, sitting down on the small bench next to the stall. The old woman studied her face closely. "The invisible wounds have been exposed. This is the first step towards healing." Aisha's eyes widened. "How do you know?" With an enigmatic smile, Grandma Camaria took a handful of dried leaves and began to grind them in a small mortar. "The ancestors speak, and their stories are written on your face, daughter. You have found your power, but now you must decide how to use it." During the following weeks, Aisha rediscovered the community that had shaped her. She spent afternoons teaching children at the local school, where her parents had taught for decades. She participated in traditional ceremonies that had marked her childhood and learned from the older women the secrets of motherhood passed down through generations. On a particularly hot afternoon, while resting in the shade of a centuries-old mango tree, Aisha was surprised by the arrival of Regina Mendez. Her mother-in-law, visibly out of place in her Italian linen suit and expensive shoes, seemed nervous, holding a small box wrapped in thin paper. "I expected to find her at home," said Regina, looking around with barely disguised curiosity. "Her parents told me she would be here." Aisha indicated a spot beside her on the rustic bench. "It's been my favorite spot since I was a child. The tree is as old as my great-grandmother, and they say she planted it herself." Regina sat down carefully, placing the box between them. For a few moments, an uncomfortable silence hung in the air. "I came to apologize," Regina finally said, the words sounding strange on lips accustomed to orders and criticism. "Not just for Tiago, but for myself. For every time I made you feel less because of your origins, your traditions." Aisha observed her mother-in-law, noticing for the first time the small lines of worry around her eyes, the vulnerability she hid so well beneath the mask of perfection. "Regina, you too were a victim of the same system," she replied gently. "You also had your invisible wounds." The older woman nodded, unshed tears glistening in her eyes. "Eduardo and I have talked a lot. About the past, about the patterns we perpetuate." She pushed the box toward Aisha. "This belonged to my grandmother, and before her to your mother." Intrigued, Aisha opened the package, revealing an antique necklace with an ornate silver medallion. Inside the medallion was a tiny braid of dark hair intertwined with golden strands. "It's Amara's necklace," Regina explained. "The woman Eduardo told you about. Part of her story was erased from official records, but some women in the family kept her memory alive in secret." Aisha held the necklace reverently. "Why are you giving me this?" Because you are the first in generations with the courage to break the cycle, Regina replied. And because this baby, she gently touched Aisha's belly, will be the firstborn under the complete truth of your legacy. That night, after Regina left, Aisha stayed awake, contemplating the necklace by candlelight. She felt connected to a greater purpose, a tapestry of destinies intertwined for centuries. Her diary, which had previously recorded only pain, now contained a new entry. Today I received more than a gift. I received a responsibility. The wounds are not only mine to heal, but those of generations of silenced women. And the healing is not only for me, but for all who will come after. The elegant office on the top floor of the Mendez Corp Tower remained exactly as Aisha had left it weeks before her temporary retreat to her hometown. The panoramic view of the city seemed distant now, as if it belonged to another life. 6 months pregnant, Aisha moved with newfound dignity, her body carrying not only a new life, but also a new determination. Eduardo Mendez waited for her, watching her with a mixture of admiration and curiosity as she examined the architectural models laid out on the large meeting table. "I'm glad you accepted my invitation, Aisha," he said, indicating a comfortable chair. "Your email mentioned a proposal that might interest me," she replied, sitting up carefully. "Something related to my research on economics in vulnerable communities." Eduardo nodded, his eyes shining with an enthusiasm rarely displayed. Mendez Corp has invested millions in technological infrastructure throughout the country, but our social projects have always been superficial, more focused on marketing than on real transformation. He slid a folder toward her. Unlike the microaggression dossier, this one contained plans, budgets, and preliminary studies. We want to create a genuine initiative to support traditional communities, starting with Igbale, Eduardo continued. Digital infrastructure that respects and strengthens local traditions, not replaces them. And we want you to lead the project. Aisha flipped through the documents, her heart racing as she realized the magnitude of the proposal. Why now? Why me? The family patriarch stood up and walked to the window. For a moment he seemed vulnerable, almost fragile. Because I'm getting older, Aisha, and I realize I built an empire at the expense of many important things. He turned to face her. The confrontation in the library wasn't just about you and Tiago. It was about a family, a company, that lost its connection to what truly matters. He pointed to a map on the wall, where small red dots marked the project's target communities. We call this Project Roots. We want to reconnect Mendez Corp with its origins, honor the legacy of Amara and all the communities that contributed to our history, but were never properly recognized. Aisha felt the baby move in her womb, as if responding to the energy of the moment. And Tiago? Does he know about this? Eduardo's expression deepened. My son is going through a difficult process of self-evaluation. He's been working remotely, refusing to return to the apartment or this room. But the future of the company will eventually belong to him and his son. Eduardo sat down again, leaning forward intently. Aisha, you have the vision, the knowledge, and the sensitivity to lead this project, not as the wife of a Mendez, but as an executive in your own right. What if my marriage doesn't survive this crisis? She asked directly. Your place in this company doesn't depend on your marital status, Eduardo replied firmly. Project Raíces is yours, regardless of what happens between you and Tiago. Aisha closed the folder slowly, thoughtfully. I need complete autonomy over the budget and implementation, and I want a team made up primarily of women from the communities themselves. Granted, Eduardo replied promptly, and I want to start immediately before the baby is born. There's a lot of groundwork to be done. The board will be informed of your appointment later today. Eduardo extended his hand in a formal gesture that sealed not only a professional agreement, but a new phase for both of them. In the following weeks, Aisha immersed herself in the project with renewed passion. She established her office on a different floor of the corporate tower, recruited experts in community development and appropriate technology, and created an advisory board composed of elders and leaders from the communities involved. Grandma Camaria, to the surprise of many well-dressed executives, became a constant presence at strategic meetings, her traditional knowledge often offering solutions that modern technology did not contemplate. One Friday afternoon, while finishing a video conference with community leaders, Aisha was surprised by a notification on her tablet, an email from Tiago, the first in weeks that didn't deal with domestic or medical matters. "Can I see the project you're working on? I'd like to understand what you're building." Simple, direct, without the usual arrogance, but also without grandiose promises. A small step perhaps, but in the right direction. With her heart racing, Aisha replied with equal simplicity, "Monday 10 a.m. Bring questions, not assumptions." It was a start, not necessarily of reconciliation, but of something equally important: professional respect. The meeting room on the 18th floor buzzed with the nervous energy of a team in crisis. Monitors displayed downward graphs and alarming headlines. Asian group initiates hostile takeover of Mendez Corp. Aisha, now 7 months pregnant, maintained her composure as analysts presented increasingly grim scenarios. The Nakamura Group acquired 15% of the shares in secret transactions during the last month, explained a young analyst, sweat visible on his brow. They are offering values 30% above market price to small shareholders. Eduardo Mendez listened in calculated silence, while Regina took meticulous notes. The great absence was Tiago, who should have been leading the response to the crisis, but who inexplicably had not answered calls since the morning. "We need an immediate containment strategy," the finance director concluded, looking directly at Eduardo. "Without the VP of International Operations, we are vulnerable." All eyes turned to the patriarch, awaiting his reaction. Eduardo took a deep breath, then did something that surprised everyone. He turned to Aisha. "What is your assessment of this situation?" An awkward silence filled the room. Aisha felt the weight of several questioning stares, but remained calm, adjusting herself in the chair to accommodate her prominent belly. "The timing of the attack is no coincidence," she began, her voice clear and analytical. "The Nakamura Group was present at my presentation on the Roots project 2 weeks ago. They noticed something we've been ignoring. The communities where we're implementing the project control territories with strategic natural resources." She slid her tablet to the center of the table, revealing an overlaid map that no one had noticed before. The traditional communities of Igbale and the surrounding region are situated above one of the largest niobium and rare earth reserves in the southern hemisphere. The project, which initially seemed purely social, is in fact our greatest competitive advantage for the future. Eduardo couldn't suppress a smile of admiration as the executives leaned forward to examine the data with renewed interest. "How do you suggest we proceed?" asked the CFO, now addressing Aisha directly. "We need a two-pronged counteroffensive," she replied without hesitation. "First, a formal alliance with local communities, establishing mutual protection agreements and participation in future profits. Second, a communication strategy that reveals to the market the true long-term value of these partnerships." As the meeting progressed with Aisha naturally taking the lead, her phone vibrated with a notification. Her heart raced at the message from the prenatal clinic. Her latest tests indicated dangerously high blood pressure and protein in her urine, worrying signs of preeclampsia. With superhuman effort, Aisha maintained her composure for the remainder of the meeting, delegating tasks and setting deadlines. At the end, as everyone was leaving with a renewed sense of purpose, Eduardo stopped her with a gentle touch on the arm. "You look pale," he observed with concern. "What's happening?" Aisha showed him the message from the clinic. "I need to go to the hospital immediately, but we can't leave the company vulnerable right now." "The company will survive," Eduardo replied firmly. "You and my grandson are the real priority." While Eduardo was arranging for a car, Aisha tried to contact Tiago again. After several rings, to her surprise, he answered. "Aisha?" Her voice sounded strangely distant, almost unrecognizable. "Tiago, I'm going to the hospital. There are complications with the pregnancy." A heavy silence filled the line, followed by sounds of rapid movement. "Which hospital? I'm on my way." "San Lucas Medical Center." "Tiago, where were you?" "The company is under attack." "I know," he interrupted, his voice now firm. "That's why I disappeared. I've been in the Igbale communities for the last 3 days, secretly meeting with local leaders. I found out about niobium and rare earths before the Nakamura Group." Aisha felt a wave of conflicting emotions: surprise, relief, but also a newfound respect. "You went all the way to Igbale? Alone?" "Not alone," Tiago replied, the sound of an engine revving in the background. "Grandma Camaria has been my guide, and not just in the forests." At the hospital, the medical team acted quickly, diagnosing early-stage preeclampsia and recommending complete bed rest. When Tiago burst through the door of the room an hour later, his appearance shocked Aisha. unshaven, dressed in simple, practical clothes, nothing like the impeccable executive she knew. But it was his eyes that surprised her most. They held a humility she had never seen before. "I'm late again," he said, approaching the bed hesitantly. "How are you? How is our son?" "Stable for now," she replied, watching him closely. "But I need complete rest until the delivery." Tiago nodded, sitting down in the chair beside the bed, keeping a respectful distance. "Aisha, there's so much I need to tell you, about what I've learned, about who I was, and who I'm trying to become." The hospital room had transformed into the unlikely center of operations for Mendez Corp over the next 2 weeks. Against medical advice, but with the characteristic determination of the Mendes family, Aisha coordinated both her health and the corporate counter-offensive from her hospital bed. Monitors displayed her vital signs alongside financial charts, creating an uncanny symmetry between the well-being of the mother and the company. Tiago, transformed by time in traditional communities, had proven to be an unexpectedly valuable ally. His direct experience with the elders of Igbale had brought a perspective that no corporate report could offer. Discussions about corporate strategy were interrupted by the unexpected arrival of a visitor whom the security guards were unable to stop. An elderly woman, majestic in bearing despite her advanced age, entered the room leaning on a cane carved with ancestral symbols. Her gray hair was impeccably braided with colorful beads, and her penetrating eyes examined each person present with wisdom accumulated over decades. "Aunt Sophia," Edward murmured, standing up with visible surprise. The newcomer inclined her head slightly in recognition. "Nephew, I see that the winds of change have finally reached the Mendez family. This is my great-aunt Sofia Mendez," Eduardo explained to Aisha. "She lived abroad for over 4 decades and—" "Well, I thought we'd never see her again." Sophia slowly walked towards Aisha's bed, ignoring the others as if they were mere furniture in the room. With surprising gentleness, she placed her wrinkled hand on the young woman's belly. "This son carries the future of 2 lineages," he declared in a firm voice, "and I see that he has arrived in a time of turbulence." When only the family remained in the room, Sophia took an old book bound in dark leather from her bag, its pages yellowed with age. "Amara's diary," she explained, placing it on the bed. "Kept secret for generations of Mendez women." Sophia opened the diary to a page marked with a faded red ribbon. Amara foresaw this moment. She wrote about a time when the empire would face its greatest threat, not from external enemies but from its own blood, poisoned by generations of arrogance. She read a passage in an ancient language that only Aisha seemed to partially recognize. "She says that salvation will come through a foreigner who is not a foreigner, carrying a child who will unite the divided lineages," Sophia translated, "and that healing will only come when man feels in his own flesh every wound he has caused." A heavy silence filled the room. Aisha's heart monitor accelerated slightly, as if the baby were responding to ancestral words. "How is that possible?" Tiago murmured. "How could she have known more than a century ago?" "Amara was not just a healer and merchant," Sophia explained. "She was a respected seer in her homeland, and she left specific instructions for a purification ritual that must be performed before the child's birth." She took a small package wrapped in colorful fabric from her bag. "These are the necessary herbs, preserved for generations. The ritual must take place in the ancestral home over 7 days, with the participation of both parents." "Impossible," interjected the doctor who had just entered the room for the routine checkup. "The patient cannot be removed from the hospital. The risk of complications is too high." "It's impossible to abandon the company during a hostile takeover attempt," Eduardo added. Sophia observed each of them with imperturbable calm. "So choose, the empire of stone or the empire of blood, material wealth or the wealth of the soul. But know that, according to Amara, there is no middle ground at this crossroads." Aisha, who had remained silent, suddenly felt an intense contraction. The heart monitor's alarming signal went off, causing the doctor to rush to her side. "Premature contractions," he diagnosed with concern. "We need to stabilize her immediately." As the medical team mobilized around her, Aisha held Tiago's hand tightly, her eyes conveying a primal fear that transcended all past differences and hurts. "The ritual," Aisha whispered between labored breaths. "We need to try." Tiago looked desperately between his wife, the doctors, and the enigmatic great-aunt who had appeared like a messenger from another time. A decision was forming on his face, perhaps the first truly independent and courageous one of his life. "Prepare an ambulance with full equipment," he ordered with renewed authority. "We're going to the ancestral home. Now." The train arrived at the Mendez ancestral home at dusk, when the sky was tinged with orange and purple hues. The ambulance carefully advanced along the cobblestone road, followed by cars with medical equipment, nurses, and, surprisingly, Grandma Camaria, who had insisted on accompanying the group after being contacted by Sofia. The old mansion, normally quiet and solemn, had been transformed into an unlikely makeshift medical center. The master bedroom on the second floor, with its large windows overlooking the garden, was equipped with monitors, oxygen cylinders, and all the necessary equipment to ensure the safety of Aisha and the baby. The doctors agreed to monitor her here for 7 days, Eduardo explained to Tiago, as they watched the medical team settle Aisha into her room. "But if there are any signs of complications, we'll return to the hospital immediately." When everything was ready, Sofia and Grandma Camaria entered the room, carrying baskets with herbs, oils, and other materials needed for the ritual. The two elders, representatives of seemingly distinct traditions, moved in harmony, as if they had worked together for decades. "The ritual of the 7 purifications begins at sunset," Sofia announced. "Are you ready, Tiago?" "I don't know what to expect," he admitted nervously. "But I'm ready." Sofia smiled enigmatically. "No one is truly ready to face their own shadows. But your desire for transformation is a start." The first day of the ritual began with a purifying bath prepared with 7 different herbs. Tiago was led to an old stone bathroom in the basement of the house, where Uncle Ambrosio awaited him. The old man explained that each day represented a phase of life and a part of the being that needed to be purified. "Today we purify the body," Ambrose explained. "Tomorrow, the mind. Then, the spirit, relationships, ancestors, the present, and finally, the future." At nightfall, when both individual rituals were completed, Tiago was led to Aisha's room. A circle had been drawn on the floor with white clay, and inside it, 7 stones were arranged in a star shape. "Sit before your wife," Sofia instructed. "Today, you will experience the first of the 300 wounds you have inflicted." Confused, Tiago obeyed, sitting down inside the circle. Sofia placed a small bowl containing a dark red liquid in his hands. "This is hibiscus tea and jurema roots," she explained. "It will open your senses to what needs to be seen." Tiago drank the bitter liquid, and for a few minutes, nothing happened. Then, suddenly, he felt a sharp pain in his chest, as if something had hit him. "What was that?" he asked, alarmed. "The first wound," Sofia replied calmly. "You're feeling exactly what Aisha felt when, during the engagement dinner, you publicly interrupted her and said that women should be graceful enough to allow men to finish their reasoning." The pain was physical, real, accompanied by a wave of shame and humiliation that left him breathless. In Aisha's eyes, he saw not accusation, but recognition. She knew exactly what he was experiencing, for she had lived through that pain. In the following days, the pattern repeated itself. Each night, Tiago physically experienced between 40 and 50 of the microaggressions documented in Aisha's diary. The pain varied in intensity, as did the associated emotions: shame, fear, humiliation, anger, deep sadness. On the 5th day, something unexpected happened. Eduardo joined the ritual, sitting next to his son in the circle. "What are you doing, Dad?" Tiago asked, surprised. "By participating in the healing," Eduardo replied simply. "Because every wound you caused has its roots in the wounds I caused before." That night, father and son shared the experience of the pain they had caused, creating a bridge of understanding that transcended words. On the 7th and final day, at sunset, everyone gathered in the room. Sofia and Grandma Camaria prepared a special herbal mixture which was divided into 2 bowls, one for Tiago, the other for Aisha. "This is the ritual of unification," Sofia explained. "When they drink it, their separate experiences will become one. Tiago will feel the strength and resilience that sustained Aisha through the 300 wounds, and Aisha will feel Tiago's transformation and genuine repentance." They drank simultaneously. For a few minutes, the room remained in absolute silence, broken only by the soft beep of the medical monitors. Then, as if coordinated by an invisible force, they both opened their eyes at the same time. Tears streamed freely down Tiago's face, while a serene smile lit up Aisha's countenance. Without a word, Tiago extended his hand, and Aisha took it. In that simple touch lay a deeper communication than any conversation they had ever shared. And then, at the exact moment their hands joined, Aisha felt a powerful contraction, unlike any she had experienced before. Her face transformed into a mask of determination as she announced, "The baby is coming, now." The old Mendez family home, which had witnessed centuries of family history, now vibrated with the urgency of a new life about to arrive in the world. The medical team mobilized quickly, transforming the ancestral bedroom into an improvised delivery room. Bright lights were installed, sterilized equipment positioned, and monitors set up to track every heartbeat of mother and child. Aisha, reclining on a bed adapted according to Sophia and Grandma Camaria's instructions, breathed deeply between increasingly frequent contractions. Her body glistened with the sweat of labor, but her eyes conveyed a surprising serenity, as if even amidst the physical pain she had found a center of absolute calm. "She's dilating rapidly," the obstetrician reported after an examination. "Faster than expected for a first-time mother." Grandma Camaria smiled, adjusting the aromatic herbs that burned in small containers in the corners of the room. "The child knows it's safe to come now. The circle is complete." Tiago remained by Aisha's side, holding her hand gently. His eyes, once always calculating and distant, now overflowed with genuine emotion. During the 7 days of the ritual, he had physically experienced each of the 300 microaggressions he had inflicted on his wife. A brutal journey of self-discovery that had profoundly transformed him. "I'm with you," he whispered, wiping the sweat from Aisha's brow. "And for the first time, I think I truly understand what that means." A particularly intense contraction caused Aisha to arch her back. Tiago felt the grip of his hand tighten, and surprisingly, felt an echo of her pain in his own body. A phenomenon that doctors couldn't explain, but which Sophia attributed to the residual effects of the unification ritual. After 3 cycles of intense effort, the room filled with the vigorous cry of a new life. The doctor lifted the baby, a boy with rosy skin and clearly healthy lungs, announcing with a smile, "He's perfect." Sophia and Grandma Camaria exchanged approving glances as the doctors quickly checked the newborn's vital signs before placing him on Aisha's chest. The little one, feeling the familiar warmth, instantly calmed down, his open eyes fixed on his mother's face with an intensity surprising for a newborn. "He has your eyes," Tiago murmured, marveling, "and the strength of spirit of all your ancestors." Aisha smiled, exhausted but radiant. "He has Amara's eyes. Eyes that see beyond appearances." Eduardo and Regina were called to meet their grandson. The patriarch of the Mendez family, normally so controlled and formal, couldn't hold back his tears when he saw the little one wrapped in traditional blankets specially prepared by Grandma Camaria. "What are they going to call him?" Regina asked, gently touching the baby's tiny hand. Aisha and Tiago exchanged a look of understanding. During the 7 days of the ritual, between the healing and transformation sessions, they had deeply discussed the name that would carry the legacy of both lineages. "Amaru Eduardo Mendez," Tiago announced. "Amaru, in honor of Amara, the forgotten matriarch who saved our family, and Eduardo, in recognition of the man who had the courage to break the cycle." Eduardo, visibly emotional, needed to lean on Regina. "It's an honor I don't deserve," he said, his voice breaking. "It's a responsibility," Sophia gently corrected. "The name celebrates not only who you were, but the commitment to who you are becoming." At that moment, Eduardo's phone rang insistently. With a sigh, he answered it, moving slightly away from the group. "I understand," he said after listening briefly. "No, we won't make any hasty decisions. The Mendez family has a new heir today, and our priorities are very clear." As he hung up, he turned to his assembled family. "The Nakamura Group has increased its offer. They are determined to take control of the company before the end of the month." Tiago, still holding Aisha and their son in his arms, surprised everyone with his reaction. A calm smile. "Let them try," he said with newfound serenity. "They may understand hostile takeovers, but they don't understand the true power of the Mendez. They don't understand what we've learned in these 7 days." 3 weeks after Amaru's birth, the garden of the Mendez family's ancestral home was transformed for a ceremony unprecedented in the family's history. Colorful lanterns hung from the branches of centuries-old trees, forming a canopy of soft light over the circular space prepared for the occasion. Seating arranged in a semicircle accommodated an unusual combination of guests. High-ranking executives from Mendez Corp side by side with elders and leaders from the traditional communities of Igbale. In the center of the circle, a stone altar had been decorated with wildflowers, crystals, and symbols representing both Aisha's African traditions and the Mendez European legacy. Sophia and grandmother Kamaria had worked together preparing the ritual space, intertwining elements from both cultures into a new synthesis that symbolized the future they were building. Aisha emerged from inside the house, radiant in a dress that blended white silk and traditional fabrics in vibrant geometric patterns. She carried a maru in her arms, the baby wrapped in a blanket woven especially for the occasion, containing symbols of protection and prosperity. Tiago waited in the center of the circle, unrecognizable to those who had known him only 3 months before. The transformation went beyond the neatly trimmed beard or the clothes that incorporated traditional elements. It was his posture, his gaze, the way he inhabited his own body, like someone who had finally found comfort in his own skin. Uncle Ambrose, designated to conduct the ceremony, stepped forward. "We are gathered here to witness not only the renewal of a marital commitment," he began, his deep voice carrying the weight of ancestral authority, but the birth of a new pact between lineages, between traditions, between past and future. Following the planned protocol, Tiago spoke first, but instead of reciting the formal vows that had been prepared, he surprised everyone, including Aisha, by pulling a small, leather-bound book from his pocket. "This is my diary," he explained, his voice clear and firm. "I began writing it on the first day of the purification ritual. It contains my acknowledgement of each of the 300 wounds I caused and my commitment to healing each one of them." A murmur ran through the audience as Tiago opened the book to a marked page. "Aisha," he continued, looking directly into his wife's eyes, "before our families, our ancestors, and our son, I acknowledge every word I used as a weapon, every silence I used as a shield, every gesture that dimmed your light so that mine might seem brighter." Silent tears streamed down Aisha's face as Tiago continued, his voice occasionally breaking with emotion. "I pledge not only to love and respect you, as I promised at our wedding, but to see you, truly see you, in all your complexity and wisdom. I pledge to listen before I speak, to learn before I teach, to walk beside you, not ahead of you." He closed the book and offered it to Aisha as a gift. "This diary is incomplete," he concluded. "The last pages are blank, waiting to be filled with the story we will write together. A story of equality, mutual respect, and shared growth." Aisha, moved, adjusted a maru in one arm to receive the diary with her free hand. When it was her turn to speak, her voice sounded clear and melodious. "Tiago, I accept your recognition not as a personal victory, but as a victory for both of us. For years, I documented wounds because I saw no other way. Today, I accept this new journal as an invitation for us to document our growth together." The ceremony culminated when everyone present stood, forming a circle around the family. Sophia and Grandma Kamaria led an ancestral chant, soon followed by everyone. The voices intertwined like the very traditions they celebrated, distinct yet harmonious, creating something new without losing their individual essences. Finally, as the applause and celebrations began, Eduardo asked for a moment for a formal announcement. With the solemnity of someone who had led a global company for decades, he stood beside the young couple. "As CEO of Mendez Corp, I am honored to announce a significant restructuring of our corporate governance," he stated. "Effective today, our board of directors will include permanent representatives from traditional communities, and our bylaws will be modified to reflect an unwavering commitment to sustainable practices and cultural respect." Looking directly at Tiago and Aisha, he continued, "And I am equally honored to announce that the leadership of this new era will be shared. Tiago Mendez and Aisha Mendez will be co-CEOs of the company, bringing their complementary perspectives to guide our future." As the celebration continued around them, Tiago gently held Aisha's hand, their fingers intertwined like the very lives they now shared with newfound awareness. 300 wounds, he whispered, and a lifetime to heal them, one by one. Aisha smiled, adjusting a maru in her arms so he could see the starry sky above. "Not just heal them," she corrected gently, "but transform them into wisdom for future generations." A year had passed since the renewal of vows and the birth of a maru. The Mendes Corp Tower, once a monument of glass and steel to impersonal corporate ambition, had been redesigned to incorporate natural and cultural elements that reflected the company's new philosophy. Vertical gardens adorned the façade, and the entrance hall now displayed a striking collaborative art installation created by Igbalay artists and contemporary designers. On the 40th floor, the former presidential office had been transformed into a circular space for shared decision-making, where floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of the city. In the center of the room, a round table made of sustainable wood occupied the place of Edward's former executive throne. Aisha was concluding a video conference with international investors, presenting the results of the first year of the Raíces project. The numbers on the screen told an impressive story: sustainable growth of 22%, a 40% reduction in carbon footprint, and the revolutionary digital inclusion of 12 traditional communities that now export cultural products and ancestral knowledge to global markets. As you can see, she concluded with quiet confidence, our regenerative business model not only protected the company from a hostile takeover attempt, but established a new paradigm of corporate success that is being studied by universities on 3 continents. When the conference ended, Tiago entered the room carrying Amaru. The boy, now a year old, already showed strong traits of both lineages. The bright, observant eyes reminiscent of Aisha, combined with the defined facial structure of the Mendes. "How was the presentation?" Tiago asked, gently kissing his wife's forehead. "Better than expected," smiled Aisha, extending her arms to her son, who happily threw himself towards her. The sustainable investment funds are practically begging to participate in the next phase of the project. The intercom rang softly, announcing the arrival of Eduardo and Regina for the family lunch they had established as an unbreakable weekly tradition. Since his official retirement, Eduardo had dedicated himself to a personal project of rediscovery, studying ancestral African languages and documenting family histories that had been erased from official records. Around the table in the rooftop garden of the executive terrace, 4 generations of the Mendes family gathered: Uncle Ambrosio and Sofia representing the past, Eduardo and Regina the transition, Tiago and Aisha the transformed present, and little Amaru the promising future. "I received news from Igbalay this morning," commented Aisha, serving a salad that combined traditional ingredients with a contemporary presentation. "The digital school is now fully operational, and 3 young people from the community have been accepted into international exchange programs." "And what about the community mining company?" asked Eduardo, genuinely interested in the project that had caused so much controversy on the board of directors. "Exceeding all expectations," Tiago replied with evident pride. "The sustainable extraction model developed by the elders, combined with our technology, is setting new standards for the industry. We have already received 4 partnership proposals from multinational companies wanting to learn the methodology." Sophia, who rarely commented on business matters, interjected with her characteristic wisdom. "It's not surprising. What you call innovation, our ancestors called harmony. Different words for the same principle." Regina, who had gone through her own transformative journey during the year, added, "Speaking of harmony, preparations for the ancestral blessing ceremony are almost complete. It will be the first time in generations that a Mendes heir will receive the full blessing." Little Amaru, as if understanding the importance of the conversation, clapped enthusiastically, provoking laughter around the table. After lunch, while the others retired for a short rest, Tiago and Aisha remained on the balcony, contemplating the city skyline that seemed so different now, no longer a territory to be conquered, but a community of which they were a part. "Sometimes I wonder," Tiago reflected, "how we could have lived so long in that bubble of isolation and arrogance." Aisha intertwined her fingers with his, a gesture that had become as natural as breathing, the same question many ask upon awakening from any illusion. "The important thing is not how long it takes us to see the truth, but what we do after we see it." 300 wounds, Tiago murmured, referring to the number that had become almost a mantra for them, a constant reminder of the journey they had traveled, and 300 lessons, which turned into 300 seeds, Aisha added, gesturing towards the hanging garden around them, where plants of diverse origins flourished in harmony. As the afternoon sun bathed the scene in golden light, Aisha felt an almost tangible presence around her, as if Amara and all the women's silence throughout the generations were there, witnessing the moment when the circle was finally completed. The true legacy, she whispered to herself as they walked together to greet their guests, is not the empire we built, but the legacy of healing we left behind.